My name is Celia D'Souza. I am today exactly 47 years old and I live in a small town in the interior of the country. Today I have my house and my things in a good place to live. But there was a very difficult time here when we lived in a farmhouse as caretakers, my husband and I and my 2 daughters. Not that the address there was bad. The house was good. It had space for the girls to play, but it was very far from everything. And anything was too far away. School, market, nearest pharmacy. Therefore, we could never forget to buy anything, because if we were missing, it would be a good piece of ground to be able to buy. There was a big house upstairs and downstairs, full of rooms and tall windows, which was used once a month, always on the last weekend, which was when the doctor, who was the owner, came with his family to stay 2 or 3 days. Then they would leave and only return the next month. We lived in a house further back, which was also very good. It had 2 bedrooms, was surrounded by windows, and was very ventilated. About that, I have nothing to complain about. In the big house, there was furniture and things that had to be cleaned every day. We had to sweep, remove dust, and always leave everything behind, as if someone actually lived in the house. So we had full access everywhere. Bedrooms, living room, bathrooms, everything. Normally, I was the one who did this job, always with the girls close to me. And my husband took care of the outside, like taking care of some plants, pruning rose bushes and large trees that were there, and also cleaning a space where there were 2 large dogs that belonged to the owner and were released at night and stayed around the home as watchmen. Now that I've explained what our routine was basically like, I'll tell you why we had to leave there. One time, I was with one of the girls cleaning the house. The youngest was 6 years old, and the other had gone downtown to do some shopping with her father. That she disappeared. And I started calling her, but she didn't answer. It was then that I heard her voice and another voice, and I got scared because there were only 2 of us in the place. So who was with her? I realized that the voices were coming from the top of the house, and I slowly went there. They both trembled, just thinking that it could be someone who would harm us. But when I saw it, she had a big doll in her hands. The doll was almost the same size as her and belonged to one of the doctor's daughters. In the room, there were several, which stayed there, and when the doctor came with his family, they were used by his daughter. But there was still something strange. If no one was speaking to my daughter, then whose voice did I hear? I took the dolls out of her hands and went down the stairs with her, and she saw them at the top of the stairs, standing. That's why she had gone up. The doll said she wanted to play. I told her not to tell lies and that there was no joke about that. So I closed the house and we went back to ours. When my husband arrived, I told him what had happened, and he said that she must have been imitating the doll's voice and not to worry. That night, I put the girls to bed and stayed up reading a magazine that taught how to knit. I was looking for a hobby and started to see knitting as a way to do something. My husband was already sleeping next to me when I heard a child's voice singing outside. I got up and went to the room where the girls were, and I saw them lying down and sleeping. So, if it wasn't them, who was singing? I went to the bedroom and woke up my husband, and he heard it too. So he went to the front of our house and opened the door, and there was the doll sitting in the middle of the path, between the big house and ours. I will never forget the feeling of seeing that in the middle of the road. A fear along with goosebumps and a weakness in the legs, which I don't know how to explain. My husband ran and picked her up, then threw kerosene and started the fire, and we only managed to get a little sleep in the morning. After about 3 days, I was sweeping the big house, and the girls were playing in front with a ball. They were laughing and jumping, and I sat and watched. That's when the youngest stopped and looked at the top of the house and pointed. My other daughter, who was a year older, looked up strangely too, and I ran over to see what they had seen. She was another of the dolls in the room, sitting by the window and looking at them. I took them and ran home and locked myself there until my husband, who had gone out, returned. When he arrived, I told him what had happened, and he went into the room, took the other doll and put it away, then locked everything and said, "If anything else happens, we'll leave." That night, we made a small fire and roasted corn with the girls, and around 9, I put them to bed, and then I stayed outside for a while with my husband. That's when we saw something that I still look for an explanation to this day. We saw something crawling from the ground and climbing the walls of the big house. It was a shadow, now shaped like a creature, But he didn't stay looking for long. But the dolls and toys that were there had been scattered all over the place. But how, if the door was closed? So we decided to leave. We no longer had peace, and I wouldn't risk anything to take my girls. If the thing entered closed rooms, there was nothing to stop it from coming after my family. My husband then called the owner, saying he was no longer going to keep his job. And he, as he liked us a lot, said that the next day he would come to the farm to talk. When he came, we told him everything. And he said, "I believe it, and I apologize. I'll even send someone to pray, wash this house and stuff." When my father bought this land many years ago, it was an old cemetery, the kind that families build to bury their relatives. But at the time, we didn't want to go through the trouble of moving the bones to another place, and we built the house with the bodies right here. If you look at the back here, you will still see the cement where the pits were. It starts at the back, which was a place where we almost never went. And he showed that we saw some parts of construction, but with the story we told, he only had confirmation that something lived in those lands. The man accepted the resignation and kicked my husband out with all his rights. With some money, we bought land and little by little built a house, which is the one I still live in today. I don't know what the owner did with the place there, and I never set foot in that place again. For my daughters, I never bought any dolls again because whenever one came, I remembered the ones they had at the farm. Thinking about what we experienced in that place, and when I say it, no one takes it seriously because only my husband and I know what we saw and heard in that place on those nights. God exists and so does the devil because those things I saw, without a doubt, are his things. Good night.